right, testing 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Looking good. Looking good. If you're joining me in the chat, make sure to say hey. Or if you're joining me on the stream, make sure to say hey in the chat. There's probably some big football game going on right now, so I'm probably not going to have too much in the way of visitors, but that's okay. What's going on? It's Mike. Glad to see you. Thanks for joining me. Just getting my camera set up here. Hope everybody's doing okay. If you're there. Oh, hey, it's Brad. What's going on, Brad? Brad, hey in the chat. That's right. You know, I need to edit the way this looks. Background color. Let's get a background color here. What do you think, Brad? Right now we got, bear with me. I want to work on, when I put these little boxes up, right now I'm getting a background color, and I want it to be, well, black can work. I guess I just need to do it as Max Verstappen. I'm missing Formula One, bro. I'm missing it. I think I gotta do something about this. Bear with me. Sorry, man. I'll deal with that later. Yeah, I miss Formula One. I gotta admit, it's such a. Is it? I guess tell me this. Is it fun? And the reason I ask that is, I told you before, I didn't like how, you know, once they got rid of refueling, it just seemed kind of boring to me. It just seemed kind of boring without refueling. It seems like it's all tire strategy and which manufacturer has figured out like how to hack the diffuser. I don't know. I mean, I'm going back from a few years, so maybe I'm overstating it, but I am curious, like, what do you think? Is it decent? Do you like it? Do you think I should watch it? If you're joining Brad and I, make sure to say hey in the chat. What's Pantone's color of the year? Fantastic question. That's a really good question. I should look that up. In fact, why not? Let's take a look here. So I'm going to jump over. I'll bring this up on the screen. We'll go maximum. And then, all right, let's look up Pantone's color of the year. 2025er. What do we got? Let's see what, oh, Cashmere, Pantone 17. Let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this. There's your color of the year right there, Cashmere, I think. Cashmere Pantone 17.6. I like it. That's the color of the year, Brad. So I'm guessing we got a... Now hold on a second. What's this? Marigold. So I'm guessing they're putting together a palette. Maybe it's a palette. Maybe it's not just one color. This is with Real Simple. White grape. Oh, come on. They're not giving it to us, Brad. I'm sorry. Okay, so this is their fashion color trend report for spring, summer. Anyway, again, great radio. I'll have to do some research on that. Welcome if you're joining Brad and I here on the stream. Make sure to say hey. Thought I'd do just an impromptu. It's Sunday afternoon here on the East Coast of America. Beautiful day today. Mild weather in the 60s. Nice and cool, dry, sunny, blue skies. Went to church, was good. Sadly, had to go by myself. Miss Lydia woke up with a wicked migraine. So she stayed home, eyes closed, got home from church, had a little something to eat, sat out in the backyard and smoked a pipe. And man, was it nice. It was just nice. Had a pipe full of Peterson's nightcap. Hold on, I'll show it to you. Okay. So here's, I'm going to get in trouble here with YouTube. Here's what I smoked. This is, I got to hold it back. This is not a self-focusing screen. What I can do, bear with me, kids. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this right up there. See if it's trying to get my face. There you go. That's not too bad. So this is a Savinelli pipe made in Italy, Savinelli. This is their 2024 St. Nicholas edition. So they put out these editions every year for Christmas. And then I smoked Peterson Nightcap, which is kind of an English style, burly, very rich flavored, a little bit like a farmyard, kind of like it. Anyway, so that was my day so far. I've been waiting on this. I was using a stand before. It was like this, stand for the mic, and I got this arm. I had an arm before, but it wasn't working the way my desk was set up. Won't get into the details. Got this one with the pneumatic arm. Really nice, really. So now I can just sit back and I can move around, not too much trouble. So that's kind of cool. But that's been my day so far. Let me get into these comments here. I would love to know what your day's been like. Brad says regarding F1, the year was interesting. First time ever 4 teams had a 1-2 finish. Very cool. Chris Wilson in the morning. Man, Chris, I have not seen nor heard from you in forever. How you doing, brother? Thank you for your courage, Chris. Thank you for your courage. Thanks for joining. A little inside baseball for Chris and I. Maybe y'all watch or listen, to the No Agenda podcast with Adam Curry and John C. Dvorak. It's been going for many years. Fantastic podcast. They deconstruct the news. It's just really good, really good. But Chris and I met through that. Chris, just for what it's worth, when I was on the No Agenda server, the Mastodon server, loved it, etc. When that thing fell apart and people went off to their own and did their own thing, I kind of bombed out. I just wasn't so thrilled with where things are going and all the acrimony, etc. I actually have not listened to the show in a long time, although if you are familiar with Dame Jennifer, she's coming over to the house for Thanksgiving on Thursday with us. Well, we live in the same town here, so... Yeah, hope you're doing great. Brad says St. Nicholas feast day is coming up. Amen, Brad. I got to tell you, I'm so grateful for the church. Now, Lydia and I are going to a Lutheran church. I grew up Catholic, I've mentioned before. Went from Catholic to non-denomination, charismatic. It was 1980. It was nuts. Although a lot of good things happened through that. I was blessed in many ways. By the way, let me know if let me know if everything's okay, audio, all that kind of stuff. You say, Chris, are you saying I am laggy? I hope that's not the case. LGY, I'm not sure if that's laggy or not, but let me know what you're saying. But anyway, very grateful for the church. This Lutheran church that is within walking distance of my house, pastor's rock solid. Good theology, nice and kind of orthodox theology, good group of people, phenomenal people actually at this church. Somewhat sacramental, which is nice, somewhat liturgical, but at the same time a level of freedom. Just very blessed by this church. So, yeah, thank you. Chris says, I'm alive but only in real life. I'm alive but only in real life. Oh, got it. Little girl, yay. Sorry, Chris. I'm not hip with the kid speak. I'm not hip with the kids and how they talk. That's not true. No cap, fra, whatever. I'm sus, as the kids say. Drinking a cup of black coffee. It's about 5 in the afternoon here. Really good to be alive. Looks like folks will come and go. I do these impromptu live streams. I don't have any agenda on this one. I don't have any list of topics. I've not been plugged into the news. I've not been plugged into what's going on. It's funny, Chris, you say that's a no agenda term. I've been listening for years, though I haven't been listening in a while, but for some reason I'm not familiar. But from the troll room. Gotcha. Okay. Fair enough. I've checked out the troll room once or twice before. I used to use IRC quite a bit way back in the day, but was never a troll room guy. Anyway. But yeah, really, really good to be able to just throw the camera on and chit chat a little bit. I will say one thing. So I've got this, I'm launching this business, if you will. I'm launching a publication. January 1st, I've got this newsletter. It's for entrepreneurs, so it's for people, and you can buy it if you're out of the U.S., but mainly it's like United States. It's not limited, but it's probably more focused on U.S. business. But anyway, U.S. entrepreneurs, people trying to start businesses, and I'm going to share something about this, not a sales pitch. People who have smaller businesses that want to grow them, etc. And I've been wanting to do this for a while. I kind of conceived of it, have a vision for it, etc. So the first one goes out the first week of January. I've got the rough draft written. It's been written for the better part of a month already. And I've been working on the edit with this thing, and it's probably a good 16 to 20 pages printed. It's long. It's going to be a printed newsletter, hard copy like the old school. And it's not cheap. I'm charging $97 a month. So I've already got a handful of folks signed up. It's great. So I'm excited about this launch. I wrote the first draft and I was like, okay, the content here is solid, but it's missing something. And this kind of gets to the creative process. And I could have had this thing edited and finalized already. I could have been done. That's how far ahead I've been. But I've just been stuck on the edit. I'm like, something's missing. And I just sat with it for a while. And in this last week, I'm like, man, dude, you got to get on this because you're going to, within a few days, be behind schedule. And you don't want to launch this thing behind schedule. You want to start out with a little bit of a bang. And so what ended up happening is, I've heard this from other people before, but I want to say in January this year, or was it January last year? Oh, this is what it's like getting old. It's terrible. Well, I keep a book list, I can tell you. But I read a book by Sir Delange, was a Catholic priest. I think it was written in the 50s, if I remember correctly. And it's called The Intellectual Life. I'm just looking it up to see when I read this thing. Yeah, I finished The Intellectual Life by Sir Delange in January. So January 14th of this year is when I read it, finished it. And one of the things that he recommends, and this is really just like and it sounds like The Intellectual Life, it sounds presumptuous. He was a Catholic priest dedicated to intellectual pursuits. He was a scholar. He was an expert on St. Thomas Aquinas, among some other things. And he was just saying, like, look, if you want to accomplish a life's work through your intellectual pursuits or any other type of pursuit, you have to orient your life around your pursuit. Like if you're going to be an academic and you're going to be researching and writing on something, you can't be going out to dinner parties and football games and concerts and so on all the time and be social all the time and have visitors to the house all the time. You need time left to yourself so that you can study, read, write, meditate, etc. But one of the things that he suggested, so that was just kind of the general sense of the book, and it was good. It was a very good book. I'd highly recommend it if you have the sense that you have a life work that you want to accomplish. One of the things he recommended, like if you're trying to solve a problem, and you've got a sticky problem that you can't figure out, before you go to bed at night, concentrate on it. Think about that problem for a few minutes. Just get it oriented in your mind and then go to sleep. And let your subconscious chip away at it. And over time, you may find when you wake up that there's an answer. And so this goes in line with some of the work of Ian McGilchrist, who talks about the creative act. I've done content on this before. I won't get too deep into it. But you can't force creativity to happen. You can't just force your mind to come up with an answer for something. Sometimes you're trying to synthesize things and come up with answers and solve problems and so on. And you can't just call creativity on demand. You can't just go, hey, I need a creative answer, give it to me. These things come unbidden because they work in our subconscious in the background, and then they just kind of pop up unbidden. And they're a surprise. It's always a pleasure. You're like, that's where the whole eureka, or I've got it, Watson. I've got the answer. So I knew with this first draft, I needed something creative. I don't mean razzmatazz creative. The draft was missing something. The content was workaday solid, but there was another level of creativity that I wanted to bring to this first newsletter, all the newsletters. And I didn't feel like the newsletter was capturing the vision for what I have for this whole project. By the way, the publication is called The New Privateer. And I've got this vision for entrepreneurship and how to remoralize it and recenter it within truth and make it a truly human, transformative experience, blah, blah, blah. And at the same time, help people create wealth and find freedom and success. Part of the idea being the more small business owners you have in a society, the stronger that society is, the easier it is for it to push against totalitarian government, overreaching progressives, etc. The more freedom people have, blah, blah, blah. But I had kind of an aha today as I've been wrestling with this thing. So last night I went to bed and I'm like, I got to figure this out, thought about it, woke up. It wasn't like I had some grand answer, but I was sitting in church and I got a half answer during the sermon. I was like, and it wasn't the sermon, actually. It was just, I had this aha. Got home, ate something, went out to smoke the pipe, and as I was smoking the pipe, the full freight shipped. Like I got the whole thing, and I was like, that's what's missing. Wrote a bunch of notes, and now I've got a plan forward for this project that I'm working on, The New Privateer. So I'm just sharing that more from a perspective of creativity. It's funny how this stuff works. Chris Wilson says the Little Girl Yay jingle was shortened to LGY as a celebratory exclamation, not as common as ITM, and thank you for your courage. For those just joining, Chris is referring to a podcast called The No Agenda Show, No Agenda Podcast, and Adam Curry, John C. Dvorak. Some of you folks may remember Adam Curry. Some of you old-timers like me, he was one of the original MTV VJs, Adam Curry. He of great hair, beautiful hair, but now he is, and Adam, widely recognized and rightfully so as the kind of founder of podcasts. They call him the Podfather. Hey, it's Ceramic Tampa Steve. Hey, what's going on, Steve? Good to see you. It was great to get some follow-up emails from you after the last stream. Like to see your work. And for what it's worth, I didn't answer back, but I did watch those videos, and I absolutely know all about ceramic coating, my friend. I was just sharing with you about one of my clients that does car care appearance products. It's an overlapping space. I would be curious to know, whose ceramic product do you use when you ceramic a car, when you do a coating? I'd be curious. And Invisible Glass, Stoner Ink, they've got a ceramic coating for glass as well. It's got a good 1.5, 2 year life to it. It's designed more for the at-home garage enthusiast to apply as opposed to a pro like you. But I'm curious what product you use, Steve. Brad says, here's something in the Canadian news. Our Prime Minister is giving Canadians GST 5% tax break for 2 months on certain essential items. Then in April, everyone who makes less than $150K gets $250. Well, how generous, how beneficent of this wise king of yours to give you all a little sprinkle back of your own money. How generous and kind and just gracious of the Prime Minister, Mr. Trudeau. to take your $250 and then give your $250 back to you. Wow. Brad, what do you think of this? This is almost like, it's kind of like Kamala when she was running. She's trying to make it sound like she's so pro-business. Oh, I'm so pro-small business. I'm going to give small business entrepreneurs $750 and we're going to launch small businesses all over the country. You can't get out of bed for $750. Give me a freaking break. That's like half a day work for somebody. What is she even talking about? But somehow she was the entrepreneur, the pro-business. The only people that $750, the only people that get excited about that, the only people that get excited about a $250 give back are people that are already living on the government teat. It's just like they're going to get one little bonus, one little freebie. It's disgusting. Look, I get that we have to have taxes. I'm not anti-tax in general, but give me a freaking break. Chris says, sometimes I force myself to be creative. Usually involves dumping all the obvious things followed by all the stupid things. Then you are forced to get creative. It's building a muscle. Now, see, Chris, I do like that. This idea of stripping stuff out of the way. And the reason being, and I think you're right, by the way. I know you're kind of tongue-in-cheek forcing yourself to be creative, but you have to give something your attention in order to be creative. So if there's a problem, you have to give that problem your attention. If there's a challenge, you have to give that thing your attention. If there's an opportunity to synthesize 3 different ideas into a new idea, you have to give those 2 or 3 ideas your attention. And I say that to your comment because everything in the world around us is designed to take our attention. It all is designed to take our attention, to steal it. And it's like, if you can't own your own attention, if you're just always being distracted by the latest, news story, the latest piece of entertainment, the latest gossip, the latest, podcast or video, Livestream, all these things, like if you're always just giving your attention to these things, you will never be creative. That's one of the lies of all these tech advertisements. You see these ads where it's like, if you get the new Samsung Galaxy 12,000, you'll be so creative and look at all the stuff you can do. And Apple does this all the time. And you just feel like if I can get this piece of technology, I will be so creative. Look at all the things I'm doing. That's how they position it. But the fact of the matter is these slabs of silicon become great distractions. And because you're so distracted, you're actually not creating anything. Your mind isn't working. So Ian McGilchrist in The Matter with Things, a massive 1,400-page, 2-volume tome, talks about a few things. One of them is the generative kind of state of your mind. This is that, subconscious, you can't force it to happen. But the other is the permissive state, meaning you have to create a state of permissiveness in your mind for creativity to happen. If you are distracted, if you are overwhelmed by anxiety-inducing, amygdala-growing bad news, if you're full of fear, if all these kinds of things that the modern person is beset by, you can't be creative. You need to have a permissive state of mind, and part of that equals boredom. You have to be somewhat bored in order for these ideas to spring forth. Your mind wants to give you ideas. It wants to solve problems, and it works on these things in the background, but it can't give them to you unless there's some time to just kind of be down, to be bored, to be not distracted. And that's where I think some of your comments on forcing yourself to be creative come into play. James Altucher, yeah, he was pretty good. Boss, not sure what that's in reference to, Steve, but let's see what you got here. NanoPro Borophene Ceramic 4.0, 10-year warranty. Wow, 10 years. That's a lot. By the way, Chris, I got a question, or Steve, I got a question for you. I was watching one of the videos, and you were taking down, you were using a buffer to take off all the coats. So you mechanically remove the wax buildup and all that. Do you do like a prep wash? Do you do any type of, I'll say chemical, meaning some type of soap, prep wash, etc., to take layers off? Or do you just go mechanical? And then second to that, when you mechanically take down those layers, are you worried about going through the paint? How do you make sure that you don't go too far down? I'm not asking for trade secrets. I'm just saying, as a pro, I'd like to hear how you approach that. I would imagine there's some way to avoid that. Brad says, our great dictator shines down on us mere mortals. Yes, he does. Trying to buy votes. And you know what? For $250, he'll get them. I mean, this is the thing with Kamala. I know people got all jitty with her idea of giving you 700, 750. We're going to have just a onslaught of new businesses. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to step away from the camera and turn on my overhead light here. It's looking a little dark. Bear with me. 30 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. I shall return. All right. Now, I'm going to bring the levels down a little bit. My goodness, we're glowing in the dark, kids. Let me just bring my levels down a tad. Let's see what we got here. That's not bad right there. What do you think? Hi. Great radio. I've been saying that a lot lately. Hey, if you're just joining us on the live stream, it's just an impromptu chit chat with Uncle Mike. Hope you're doing great. Thanks for joining. If you'd like to, say hey in the chat. We don't bite here at Mike Gaston Industries. We're a friendly group of folks for the most part. Let's see what Chris says. Chris says, the more you do these creative challenges, the better you get at pulling something creative from left field that bears merit. I agree 100%. And you made the comment earlier. It's like, I think you said something to the effect of, it's like, it's building muscle, you said earlier. And I agree with that 100%. The more you do it, the better. And I think this is, that works both ways. The more you're distracted, the more you're overwhelmed, the more you're distressed, the more you're just consuming all the time. I think the weaker you get, the harder it gets. I used to read, I mean, this is no lie, I would read practically a book every other week. I mean, I would sometimes read 40, 50 books in a year. I was voracious in my 30s, 40s, well, my 20s as well. I just loved reading my whole life. Then things like iPhones, iPads, the internets. Now, I was on the internet quite early, but like the consumptive aspect, video, all this stuff became possible. Like early internet, like streaming video was like, I remember people saying like, at some point the pipelines will be so great you can stream videos. Like, yeah, and you're thinking some little tiny pixelated. Here we are. So when that stuff kind of became available and normal, my reading habit dropped off to the point where, man, I was hardly reading. There was a point I was hardly reading 1 or 2 books a year. I mean, I went from 50 books at a peak to hardly any books at all. Now, 50 books are too many, potentially. And I used to read a lot of fiction, sci-fi, literature, fantasy, all that kind of stuff as a younger guy. But for the last, I would say, 30 years, my reading shifted to more nonfiction. It's rare for me to read fiction now. I kind of miss it. I'd like to read some literature just to enrich myself a little bit. But I got to a point where reading was difficult. To sit and read, it was like a chore. I didn't want to do it. It was painful. I could hardly keep my eyes open. It was like really bad. And I was ashamed of myself because part of my success in life has been my reading habit. My reading helped me grow intellectually. It helped me create context, gave me tools and concepts and so on about the general human experience that I could apply to life and use to solve problems. And like, those who read lead, they say. I don't know how true that is, but I've always loved reading and it's been part of my identity. Like I've just thought of myself as a reader. And I realized one day, like, you don't read anymore and you haven't been reading for at least a couple, 2, 3 years. Like, what is going on? So I endeavored to start reading again, but it was painful. it took work. And so, Chris, to your point, I had to work that muscle. Not that reading itself is creativity, but I think reading is one of the building blocks because it gives you ideas. You get to interact with other minds, these authors, and have a conversation with them. And they stretch your thinking and challenge you and give you new ideas and new perspectives. And then you're able to bring that to your life and the challenges in front of you. So, I'm back reading now. I probably read anywhere from 12 to 15 books a year. This year, I'll probably read 14 or 15 books before the year is out. I've read 13 books so far. I just started a book the other day that may take me to the end of the year just because it's pretty dense, but it's likely I'll get a couple books done. But I'm reading a little bit more with more intent, I think. I'm choosing what I'm reading topically a little bit more specific, and I'm note-taking, so I'm kind of digging into the content. They often are more academic books that I'm reading, not always. Like I just finished recently, Never Split the Difference with Chris Voss. He wrote that back in 2016, FBI top negotiator. But I thought it was kind of interesting to see how he does things. But yeah, great comment. Ceramic Tampa Steve, Trudeau, Castro's son, commie. I got to say, Steve, I've looked at the photographs, and I don't know how much they're doctored, but you see the photographs of Trudeau's father, who was Pierre Trudeau, who was also prime minister at one point, and people said he was terrible. Mrs. Trudeau and Castro together. And then you look at photos of Castro and Justin, and it's like, something seems to be going on here. Anyway, Chris says, got a call. It's 9:15 a.m. Monday morning, and a client is off the air. Take care, and I'll check in with you via some channel. Thank you for your courage. God bless you, Chris. Good seeing you, brother. That's very nice. It's been too long, so I'm glad you were able to check in. He's probably long gone by now because I've been bloviating. Brad says, if I get a Mac Mini, I can be creative. Exactly. If I get a Mac Mini, I can live stream. Here's the thing, Chris. Brad. I'm not anti-tools. I'm not saying you don't need a tool to accomplish a certain objective. I'm just saying that it's a lie that if you get the Mac Mini, somehow you're going to become creative. I would say get the Mac Mini after you've proven to yourself how creative you are. I don't know. You're just yanking my chain from the last stream. Shame on you. Shame on you. I should start charging for these live streams. Keep the riffraff out. Oh my gosh. Ceramic Tampa Steve, wash, strip, paint correct, rub out, machine polish. Got it. Okay. Nice. Nice, Steve. I've got a BMW 5 Series. I just got a buffer polisher from Griot's Garage, and I've got some pads now. I'm gonna do similar. I did strip the car. I did a prep wash, et cetera, then applied a synthetic polish shine, but I hand buffed it all. And I want to go back through and do some, I'm going to do some correcting cream on it, strip it all back down, do some correcting cream, take out some of the fine scratches, and then do a mechanical buff polish. But I'm just a ham and egger, as we say. I'm just a Saturday warrior. Brad says, you were Gandalf the Gray, now you're Gandalf the White. Brad, with the shots, you keep hitting me with shots. It's like body blow, body blow. You see, I don't even know what you look like, Brad, so I can't tease you. But all I can say is I've put myself out there. I'm waiting for your live stream so I can get in the comments and give you a hard time too, because turnabout is fair play. I guess the compliment in that, because I'm not overly sensitive, but the compliment in that is that I have faced the Balrog. I grappled with it to the pits of hell, and I arose. I came back re-embodied, greater than I was before, purified by the fires of trial, now triumphant, Gandalf the White, Michael the Bald. Ceramic Steve, Kamala, she's in Hawaii right now with a campaign 20 million in debt. Yeah, well, I'd take a little break if I were her too. I know everybody on the right, and for the record, I'm conservative. Yeah, I'm on the right, so I know people get. I don't blame her for taking a few days off. If I were her, I'd want to put my head in a paper bag and never show my face in public again. I did a little tiny campaign here for city council, and I worked my ass off. I really did, and it took me the better part of the year to recuperate, not emotionally from the loss, but I just put so much into it. My clients are so gracious. I essentially put my business on hold. I did work, don't get me wrong, but and they were cool with it. I delivered what I said I was going to deliver, but they gave me the freedom to kind of be less present and more focused on the campaign. And it was a hustle, but I'm not saying I feel bad for Kamala. I absolutely don't. She was an illegitimate candidate. She was a horrible candidate. She deserved to lose. And it's an outrage. I mean, it's an outrage that they burned through that 50 million. They're claiming bankruptcy. I mean, it's just, the whole thing is immoral, quite frankly. But for her as a human being to take a few days off and go hide, I'm telling you what she's doing right now. She's trying to figure out her life. She's like, what do I do now? Like, I've just suffered the most public, utter defeat. What do I do now? And she's no Hillary Clinton. She doesn't have the Clinton Foundation with $20 billion tied into the Saudis and every other corrupt, group of people. I'm not calling the Saudis corrupt. I'm just saying, like, all the ne'er-do-wells, the billionaire ne'er-do-wells across the globe. Anyway, so I don't begrudge her. And quite frankly, her job as a vice president it's not important. She wasn't running the country. She's immaterial to the country right now. She was immaterial to the country before. Every vice president typically isn't that material to what's going on. It'd be interesting to see how Trump treats J.D. Vance. So Kamala sitting on a beach or hiding on some private cove for a few days. It's not going to affect America. I'd like to know who is calling the shots. It wasn't her ever, but who has been calling the shots all along? But that's a whole nother story for another time. Anonymous says, do we overrate the time before phones? I don't remember spending my free time more productively. I watched TV and played games. Others may have read, but wasn't this just another form of consumption? It's a fair question, very fair question. I would say that your question and your kind of opinion that's baked in there, which I'm fine with, I'm not accusing you of anything, is accurate. I can say for myself, I've always been a reader, and I've mentioned this before on other live streams, but when my wife and I got married, we decided not to have a television. So we were living kind of counterculture to begin with. I was not super creative guy doing art installations and running for office. I mean, I wasn't doing all kinds of amazing things, but I will say that we were already choosing to live counterculture in many ways. We were trying to put priority and value on things that most people had kind of eschewed. So we have people over to the house a lot. We did a lot of, we travel a fair amount. We homeschooled our kids. We tried to invest time in that. A lot of my reading at the time in my 30s had more to do with things like typography, paper making, book binding, the history, some intellectual history, like the history of the printed word, political history, learning about Africa. We were living in Cape Town for a while during that period of time. A lot of entrepreneurial stuff, a lot of stuff on self-publishing. So a lot of it for me was a time of learning, exploration, experimentation. I didn't really watch television, but I had to make an active choice. If to your point, I was like most people, and I sound like I'm kind of like, yay me. I would have been watching Seinfeld and blowing a lot of time, et cetera. We watched a fair amount. Like, we'd rent movies. Blockbuster was my friend. We did consumptive things. And I'm not anti-consumption. I think consumption, for me, it's like, what is the purpose of a human being? Is the purpose to consume and seek pleasure? or is the purpose to produce? And I think it's it's a both and. I think when you have a life oriented towards consumption, I mean, you see it biologically, you become weak, fat, there's depression, anxiety, etc. On the other hand, if all you do is produce, you become burned out and drained. And so there's got to be a balance. Consumption towards production. You have to have recreation, so you're creating, but that you need recreation, this time of resting and recreating and refueling. So these are seasons, cycles, ups and downs, yings and yangs, whatever you want to call them. I think the time before the internet and the phones was a better time as far as being a human being. But you're right. I mean, our culture, at least in the West and in America, has always been quite, I say always, for the last, ever since World War II, ever since the end of World War II, has been very consumptive-oriented, very pleasure-oriented. And that comes from some political philosophy, too. It used to, we're in America, we're inured with this idea that, oh, it's a democracy, and like, I've got a responsibility to vote. And we all contribute to this great society. But there was a change in mid-century 1900s where we, not being the democracy, but the elites decided, look, the average person is not really well equipped to vote, to manage the country, to lead. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to make this a consumer-oriented society. Your job as an average person is to consume and enjoy yourself, pay your taxes, work your job, but have a good time. Go to the ball game, drink your beers, yuck it up. Whatever you fish, hunt, whatever you like to do that thing. Let us, the experts, take care of things. So yes, you're going to vote. We're still going to have a democracy, but really this is an elites, managerial kind of oriented society, and that's how we're going to run it. So you do see a change in attitude and assumption about what the average American's job, quote unquote, is, and what the leadership. So anyway, great question. Let's see what Tony Hawk. Tony, what an honor to have you here. I'm sure this is you, Tony. What do you think of the book summary services, the audio ones which condense a book's key points into about 10, 15 minutes? I'm on a long walk, might revisit them. I'm not a huge fan. Great question, Tony. I'm not a huge fan, only because I'll just put it out this way. My goal with reading a book is not to quick get the 5 salient points and move on. I'm not collecting gems necessarily. And I'll liken it to this. The analogy for me is, would you rather sit with a beautiful woman or someone that you love, doesn't have to be a stranger, just someone you love, and spend an hour with them just having a good time, 2 hours, 3 hours, couple glasses of wine, nice meal, discussion, would you want to enjoy time with that person? Or would you like to pay a service to somehow extract just the highlights of that 1, 2, 3 hours and then provide that to you somehow, if you could do that? Part of the beauty of a relationship is the ups, the downs, the pauses, the awkward moments, the hurts, the pleasures, pains, the love, all that stuff. It goes to make something more nuanced, more special. And so for me, reading a book isn't just about how do I get the 5 key things. I want to interact with that person. I want to understand their mind. I want to follow their logic. I want to see what shortcuts they take, what assumptions they make, what flaws they have in their thinking, how well they can articulate themselves. Now, I will say this. If I get into a book and I'm a few pages in, I can give it a chance, but let's say the book's just not doing it for me. I'm having a hard time with the author's style, attitude, thesis, whatever. Maybe the book just sucks. I give myself permission to just say, I'm out. And it's the same for a conversation. You sit with a person who's a total jackass. You just go, hey, look, I know I said I had an hour. Something's come up. I got to bounce. Don't call me. I'll call you. And you leave. You get on with your life. So I will drop a book if I don't think it's worth my time. But if the book's worth my time, I will read it. There are some books, fair enough, that maybe it's like a manual. You're just trying to learn how to do something. You want to grab the high points. For me, that's fine. You're skimming to get a job done. But I don't read just to get the high points. I do take notes. I use a Zettelkasten to collect my notes and to remember the key things that I think are important to me. But yeah, now it depends what you're trying to do, Tony. I mean, if you're trying to get the high points because you've got some project you're working on and you just need the high points to get to that project, that's fine. But that's not the same to me. That's just data collection. Like what I'm hearing from you. I'm not accusing you, but I'm not interested in data collection. I want to grow. I want to grow through having my thinking challenged. I want to grow by interacting with another mind, which a book lets you do. And I actually prefer reading a book than doing audio. I love audio podcasts, so I like to hear authors interviewed. I like to hear great thinkers interviewed, successful people interviewed, so on. But if I'm reading a book, I'm reading it, and I want to read it because I think the reading process is more nuanced and it gives me more in the end. So that's me. Be curious what y'all think. Brad said, I love reading as a teenager. I find it hard to read now. I don't have the natural built-in time to do it. Now, I hear you. I've had to find the time as well, Brad. That is a challenge. Dead on appearance. Dead on appearance. Talk to me. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Steve. I'm jumping between these threads, and so I apologize, Steve, if I'm not following you. Holic. A piece of paper with printed letters just doesn't stimulate the brain enough anymore. Today we have too many screens and colors and sounds in our lives all the time. I agree with you, and that was part of my problem. I was overstimulated, and the nature of the stimulation, it's not stimulated with some beautiful cinematic movie story, a narrative arc. It's like social media where it's this schizophrenic flow of disjointed bits of pieces of information, half of it not true, all of it designed to kind of get you anxiety and agitated. And so I had to force myself. It's like going back to the gym. You start lifting weights again. It takes time. And it's painful when you go back to the gym. After a while, you crave it. Like your body's like, I gotta work out. I need a workout. I'm dying for it. But when you haven't been to the gym in a long time and you go to the gym, it sucks at first for a long time. But after a while, you start to respond and then you need it. And it's just a beautiful thing. And that's been reading for me. Brad, friends can joke with each other and it's because they care. It's not mean. I am the jester in the family. Brad, you've never offended me or hurt my feelings. I just like to feign like, oh, how could you? Gandalf the White, I don't mind at all. But I do want you to have a podcast because I do think turnabout is fair play. I like to be the jester too. True Ceramic, 3 days to complete. Yeah, it's a lot of work, Steve. I saw some of your videos. Kamala, box of hammers have more use. No TV, you were basically Amish. Yeah, pretty much. Well, look at the beard. Come on, you can't tell? Doing a puzzle is like reading a book. The medium is the message. And then Brad also says, Brown Bear is one book I should have stopped reading after the first few pages. Not familiar with that one. It almost sounds like a children's story, Brown Bear, but I'm guessing it's not. I'll tell you one that I stopped reading, Thomas Pynchon. I started reading Gravity's Rainbow. So I started reading it years ago on, I want to say we were maybe in South Africa and it was on somebody's bookshelf. I started reading, but I didn't get very deep into it. It was kind of like Pynchon novels can be a little weird at first, like they're disorienting. And I was like, this is interesting, but I put it down. And we probably moved on to another place we were staying. And then 2-3 years ago, I was like, oh, I want to read that. So I bought it, and I think it's on one of my shelves. I should throw it in the trash. So I got into it. I pushed through. It was starting to make sense. But then the thing with Pynchon that I realized later is the guy's a pervert. And I don't mean just like, oh, there's nudie scenes. I mean, it's like pedophilia and homoerotic whatever. And I was just like, you know what? You're a great writer. This is it's fascinating where are you going with all this, but I don't know that I'm willing to pay the price that you are exacting for me to participate, to experience this story that you're telling. And I was like, screw it, I'm out. There was a certain point where it's like the cost to me, to my soul, I wasn't enjoying it. It's like, I don't want to read about this crap. And it wasn't, by the way, it wasn't like, oh, there's this bad guy who is doing these bad things and we got to catch him. It's like the main character is messed up with all this stuff. And maybe Pynchon at some point, plays it off like, oh, and now it just felt like he's just weaving this in because that's where he's at. And he just wants to weave this into this character. It's a classic postmodern, anti-hero, this warped, messed up person that you're supposed to feel sympathetic towards, but at the same time horrified by. Well, okay, but no thanks. So I was out. And I'm not a prude. I just didn't feel like it was worth it. Tony Hawk says, I suppose a 10-minute highlight can tell me if a book might be worth reading in full. Now, see, that's a good idea. I like that one, Tony. I like that a lot. Because time is money, baby. And quite frankly, you can't get your time back. Even if time's not money, you can't get your time back. So you get into a book, it's like, do I want to read this? They give you the highlights. Sounds like, yeah, that's pretty interesting. And I do, by the way, choose my books based on what I'm trying to learn. I just started reading this book. So many of you know I'm a Christian. I'm Orthodox. I don't mean Orthodox like Greek Orthodox, but very conservative Orthodox Christian. But I'm now reading a book written by an occultist / critical theorist professor because he's done some intellectual history work. His worldview is, I think, horrible, from what I can tell. But I think this work is quite revealing as it relates to modernism, science, religion, and mysticism magic. Now, you might say, Mike, what are you on about? Don't worry, kids, I'm not leaving the faith, but I think there's a narrative in our culture today about science that is not true. Science is presenting itself as this very materialist, atheistic, etc. This guy's making the argument that actually a lot of science and the people involved in founding science in modern society actually have occultic roots. Now, he's doing this from a rah-rah, look at us, our team wins, I think, perspective, trying to show like, hey, look, we occultists, I'm accusing him, by the way. I want to be careful. I'm not even going to say his name because I just started the book. I don't want to mislabel him, but this is my sense. He's kind of proud, like I found the hidden links. I'm curious from a more orthodox position to understand some of the stuff. But anyway, probably said too much. Oh, Ceramics is Trudeau Castro appearance. Oh, gotcha. See, I'm sorry, like I'm going through the stream, I'm yammering away. Brown Bear is a board book for toddlers. I thought you might be joking. My eldest would pick it up every night when she was young, even if I hid it. Yeah, kids, they get a certain book and they just want it over and over. Same thing with like movies. My kids, my boys, VeggieTales or The Land Before Time. Is that it? Land Before Time? Those little dinosaur characters running around. It was like, oh, is there nothing else that you want to read or watch, please? Napoleon Coffee, welcome. Napoleon Kofi, sorry. Hey, Mike, so I recently wrote an article on the subject of greatness, excellence, and mediocrity, strategic mediocrity. And I would like to know your general thoughts on, sorry, I didn't read it fast enough, on these themes. Would love to opine. Napoleon, welcome. But ask me a little bit more. What would you like to, what do you mean my thoughts on these themes? The themes of greatness, excellence, and strategic mediocrity? Happy to respond, but give me a little bit more. What exactly are you wondering about as I take a sip of my coffee? By the way, folks, Thanksgiving week here in the U.S., Thursday, I'm broadcasting this on a Sunday, but Thursday is going to be Thanksgiving. Those of you in the U.S., which there are only a few of you, I think, on this stream, what are your plans? You going to family? You having folks to your house? We're opening our home. We've got our eldest son with us. So one of 3 kids will be with us. And then our We have another friend who's joining us. She's a good friend, lives close by. And then the pastor, his wife, and their 2 kids will be joining us at the house. So I'm going to be doing a turkey on the big green egg. I've got a big green egg. If you guys know what that is, it's kind of a grill / smoker. I love the green egg. Love cooking on that thing. It's like a cult religion almost. So I'm going to do the turkey on the egg. I don't know if I'm just going to do it over an open flame or if I'm going to maybe smoke it. I haven't decided yet, but Lydia will dry brine the turkey in salt. We'll dry it out. She'll likely do this when she dry brines it, but we'll spatchcock it so it lays flat. It's a fantastic way to do a turkey if you like that sort of thing. All right, Napoleon's response. So the title is Why I've Given Up on Greatness and You Should Too. Okay, fascinating. Quote, how do you view the role of strategic mediocrity in achieving long-term success? And do you believe it's more sustainable than striving for greatness in every endeavor? Okay, I like this question. I'm not necessarily going to answer it based on your thinking because I haven't read this article, but just what comes to mind for me and what I like about, I'm inferring some things from your title and your follow-up, your clarification. The problem with greatness, and I especially think now, we've been talking a little bit about internet, and smartphones. I don't want to be one of these like old guys like, well, smartphones are terrible and the internet's terrible and everything was golden and lovely back in the day. It wasn't, okay? However, let's take Instagram, for example. You're spending all this time looking at somebody else's life. Beautiful images, beautiful pictures, whether it's them in the camera in some wonderful setting looking their best, or it's a shot of the Amalfi Coast. I'm on vacation, Amalfi Coast. I'm on vacation, the great redwoods of California. I'm in the mountains of Canada skiing, and everyone's living this amazing life. They seem to have all this material success. They've got all this leisure time to have, the finest, double espresso known to mankind. And so you find yourself, when you talk about greatness, you find yourself dreaming of some type of life that comes, that's kind of associated with greatness. So greatness can mean different things. Greatness could mean that I cured cancer. I will go down in history as the guy that cured cancer. My name will be spoken in the halls of academia and medicine and just history, like Jonas Salk in the vaccination, all this kind of stuff. That's one kind of greatness. The other kind of greatness is material wealth or power. I've become the greatest politician, a king, a president, a prime minister, maybe a military general, and I led my nation's forces forward to a great victory, a great statistics person. No, a great strategist. Jeepers creepers. A Sun Tzu or a von Clausewitz. This great kind of strategic mind. Maybe you're a great author. You write the great American novel. Maybe you achieve greatness through celebrity. You got like me, you got a 25,000 subscriber YouTube channel. I don't mean to brag. For those that don't know, I was joking last time about how small. I'm so happy to hit 25K. Thank you to everybody. But 25K is so tiny in YouTube terms. But personally, it's a nice opportunity. So greatness can mean different things. But I think we have a society of celebrity culture of celebrity. We kind of look to celebrity as greatness. We see the Brad Pitts of the world, even the journalists, these like highly regarded journalists, they're really just celebrities. They're not even doing the journalistic work. They're just TV presenters. And so I guess you have to ask, well, what is greatness? How are you defining it? But we do have a culture that aches for celebrity, that aches for notoriety, that aches for audience. And so I think your kind of thesis is interesting to me because that desire for greatness, it's elusive. It's almost like it's like this thing you're chasing that you can never catch. It's this elusive thing. that you're always after, but you can never catch, you never acquire. And because you're chasing it, time is going by and your life is going by. And you get to a point where it's like you've chased this unrealistic thing. And I brought up Instagram because a lot of what people are presenting out there is not real. They're creating kind of a window in, but it's a pseudo window into their life. It's not their real life. Often these people are in debt. They've got terrible relationships. They treat people like crap. They're embarrassing, obnoxious, narcissistic, etc. But what's presented to us is this amazing, enviable, beautiful thing that they have. And so I think I like where you're going with this strategic mediocrity. I mean, I would like to read the piece, honestly, because there may be another way to articulate this, but you have to give up on this desire for celebrity. You have to give up on this desire to be noted and to be filthy originals. And then focus on a life work. I mean, if you focus on a life work and you pour yourself into it, your creativity, your problem-solving power, your attention, your mind, you can do great things and you can actually transform the world around you, change lives, so on. So all that to say, Napoleon, I am fascinated by the concept. I like it. Those are my comments to this point. But yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up, and I wish you the best with that piece. Brad wants to know, how many people get trampled at Target for a $300 TV this year? Are we running a bet here? We're going to take a parlay? I do not leave the house on Black Friday. I mean, I'll go for a walk around the neighborhood, but I do not go shopping on Black Friday. There are people that love it. Like, for them, it's fun. It's like they want to get out there. Typically women. I don't know many men that love going shopping on Black Friday. Most of the women I know don't enjoy it, but there's a subset of women out there that just love to shop. And boy, Black Friday is like full contact sport for them. They love it. No, thank you. Napoleon, I'd love to know the book by the cultist scientist. Sure. Hold on. Again, I'm making comments based on ignorance. So anybody, the title is The Myth of Disenchantment. It is written by Jason Joseph. Oh, Mike, I can't even talk. Take two. The title is The Myth of Disenchantment, and it is written by Jason Joseph. I swear I've not been drinking. I promise. Josephson. Why is that so hard to say? Josephson Storm. Anyway, I'll show you the title right here. This is the book, The Myth of Disenchantment. And he's saying that the modern world claims that modernity included the disenchantment of the world. It banished all the superstitions and spirits and magic and occult and all that. And his argument is that's a myth. Modernism, first of all, is questionable. And second of all, it's rooted in a lot of the occultic, mythic, magic, superstition. It's never gone away. In fact, modernism creates more of it. That's his argument. Now, I'm interested to get into it. I'm only 20 some odd pages in. I've read the preface and the introduction, and now I'm digging into chapter 1. And, you know, it's a thick book. I want to say it's, what is it? It's about 316 pages. And then, of course, you have notes and all that kind of stuff afterwards. And he writes in quite an academic tone. I mean, it's a little bit of work. It's not obtuse, but it's like the sentence structures are very, thinky. Okay, that's fine. I mean, God bless him. I think I'm actually excited to read it. I think it's going to be quite interesting. And I know I'm not going to be agreeing with him. A lot of it I'm going to say I don't agree with, but at the same time, it's going to be really interesting to see the world through his eyes and reflect on that. And I think I don't highly recommend that you read stuff that I'm not, it's good to read things that you disagree with. I'm not going to spend 3 years in his material, but at the same time, it's kind of interesting. Oh, what do we got here? Napoleon said, For a moment, as you were speaking, I thought you had read the article. Thanks for your feedback. Well, there you go, Napoleon. See, you got a great title. It's all credit to you. Great title. And your follow-up clarification kind of made it easy for me to infer where your thinking was at. But quite frankly, to give us both credit, I think about these kinds of things a lot. I'm not articulating it the way you have in your article, but I'm right there with you, and I think it's an interesting piece. So thanks for asking about it, and again, all the best. Where are you going to publish it? I'm kind of curious. Brad wants to know, have you ever read The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis? I absolutely have. I think that's the last book I read. Well, the funny thing about C.S. Lewis and The Screwtape Letters, Brad, Wormwood, if you remember Wormwood, as I was reading Josephson Storm's intro, and he says, well, this idea of modernism as a rejection of enchantment, this disenchantment, one of the arguments that the older demon tells the younger demon, he says, what you want to do is get your person that you're responsible for dragging into hell, get them to believe that there is no hell, that there is no devil, that like part of the deception, the most effective way isn't to get them to be a horrible sinner, to get them to be this terrible womanizer, alcoholic, guy who kicks dogs and cheats on his taxes. My words, not Lewis's. But it's to more, so don't try to turn him into some evil ogre. Get him to believe that there is no spiritual world, that there is no heaven or hell, that there are no angels or demons, that everything's just material. And if you can get him to believe that, then he becomes a very nice, he reads his newspaper and smokes his pipe and nods to people as he walks the street. He's just a very amenable, amicable person, straight, but spiritually bankrupted. And so that was his advice. I forget. You have Wormwood, and then you have Screwtape and Wormwood? I can't remember, but anyway, that was his advice to young Screwtape. Okay, Brad says, I used to read Jezebel articles on Facebook to understand the crazy feminists. Yeah, that was actually a good source. I agree with you. I haven't followed them in a long time. Napoleon, so it's on Medium. I sent the link earlier. Fantastic. Thanks, Napoleon. I don't know if I don't see a link in the chat. I'm using a software interface to do these interactions. Often something with a link will get held. It'll get put in a queue for approval, which I can't do based on I use, what am I using? Ecamm Live to these live streams and control the cameras and all that crap. But when I get in there later, I don't even know if I'll I may not let this one stand. I don't often let the live stream stand, so you'll have to forgive me if I don't publish this after. But if I do publish it afterwards, I will go through and approve that comment so that people can click through and read it. All right, what are we? We're like at just over an hour, almost an hour and 10 minutes in on this lovely Sunday evening. Hope you guys are doing great. I really appreciate you joining me. It's I just say it every time. I love turning this camera on and hanging out. If you haven't said hello yet and you're here hanging out, you're lurking in the corners, you can continue to lurk. This is a lurker-friendly zone. However, if you want, say hi in the chat. It'd make my day if you just say, hey, what's going on, Uncle Mike? But yeah, what else is going on, folks? I'll go for a few more minutes before we wrap up here. I don't want to take up too much of your time here on a Sunday afternoon. Hopefully everybody's doing great. Napoleon, where are you located, by the way? Oh, man. That's some good coffee. And I'm drinking it at 6 o'clock, which means I will be having a hard time falling asleep later tonight. But that's all right. I did so much work last week. I shipped a lot of things last week. I've got a fair amount of work to do this week, but however, a little bit lighter schedule, a little bit more free time. And of course, we're coming into the Thanksgiving holiday, so it's going to be a short week. In fact, I'm going to look at my camera real quick. I'm kind of curious what my calendar looks like for tomorrow. Do I have anything first thing in the morning? I do not. So I've got the whole morning open, which means I do not have to get out of bed at 5 a.m. and get rolling. Brad says, who are the 6 not chatting? We welcome you. Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, we got we got double digits here at Gaston International. Oh, what a blessing. What a blessing to be alive. So Brad wants to know, what's your coffee of choice, Mike? So I got a couple. We do, by the way, real quick, Napoleon says Ghana. So it's 11:06 p.m. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining us from Ghana, Napoleon. That's awesome. So Brad wants to know about my coffee. I will do a few things. I still do sometimes, roast my own. So I've got a bunch of green beans from different points of origin. I like Ethiopian coffees especially. I like some Central American coffees as well. Those tend to be the two, like places that I go to, Costa Rica, Panama, like Central America, and then Ethiopia as far as African coffees go. So when I roast my own, that's what I do. I don't enjoy, coffee has had different waves, the way it's prepared, the way it's roasted. The more contemporary coffee roasters, so I don't like coffee roasted too dark. Like Starbucks is kind of like Charbucks. They over roast it to hide inferior beans, but then they charge a premium. But the like local roaster down the street kind of thing, the hip millennial, Gen Z, fifth wave coffee shop or whatever they're called, I don't know. Great place to hang out. If they prep the coffee there, it's often really nice. People are cool, environment cool. However, you buy, it's not even a pound. You pay close to $20 for less than a pound. And to me, it's under roasted. So for the methods that I use to prepare my coffee, it's under roasted. So it's a little too grassy for me. So I tend, shame upon shame, to go cheap. My wife will buy a ton of coffee. I want to say it's from Aldi's. I don't think it's Trader Joe, but Aldi's has kind of this, I don't even remember what the brand is, but we'll buy a few pounds of that. That'll be my go-to in the mornings. I just make a press pot of coffee, usually like 850 to 900, like almost a liter of coffee in a French press. Share that with the missus, and then usually in the afternoons, I'm making the same coffee through a pour over, but then I'm making butter coffee. So I'm throwing a tablespoon or two of butter, putting that in the blender, maybe a sprinkle of salt, and I'll drink butter coffee just to get the fat. I eat carnivore, so that's what I do. Yeah, so Anonymous wants to know, what's my brewing method? So I'll do either French press or a pour over. Those are the two. I love a great espresso. I used to have a home espresso machine. It was not like high-end. My family chipped in and bought me one for my birthday one year. When we moved, we sold it. But I love a great espresso. But typically, French press in the morning and then pour-overs, a couple pour-overs in the afternoon. That's typically how I like to brew. I just got a Hario, I forget what the brand they gave, but it's a Hario scale. The scale is great. You essentially tell it the grind ratio, the water to grinds ratio. So if I'm going to do a French press, I do a 1:12. So then you put the beans on it. It tells you how much water it's going to require for that ratio. Grind my beans, throw them in the pot on top of this scale, and then you kind of can reset it so that what it does is it remembers the weight and it knows the ratio. When you pour the water in, it starts to give you percentages. So when you do a pour over, you don't just pour it all in. Like you do 15 or 20% for the first 45 seconds. Then at 45 seconds, you bring it up to 40%. Then you let that sit till the 1 minute 30 second. Then you bring it up to 60%. Or there are different ways to do this. I bring it up to 70%. Another minute to 2.5 minutes, then I bring it up to 100%. And then at 3.5 minutes, whatever hasn't gone through that filter, I don't drink. So that's one way. When I want to go high end, there's a place here called Second State. I'll go to Second State and I will get their espresso roast. It's not super dark, but it's darker because everybody under roasts everything, in my humble boomer opinion, not a boomer, by the way. And the espresso roast, it's like they take it just into second crack, perfect. And I will buy a pound of their espresso roast. I forget what it's called, but that's what I'm doing. And usually espresso roast will have some good Ethiopian in it. Anonymous says, I'm a full hipster tea, like coffee with V60 pour. So I'm using a V60. I use the ceramic V60 into a Hario pot on the Hario scale. I've got a fellow stag, I want to say kettle, and I've got the fellow grinder. I forget what it's called. It's beautiful black. But yeah, I'm a hipster as well, just like you. I'm just slouching with the coffee because I drink so much of it. I can't afford like $100 a week in coffee. So that's why we do the Aldi coffee in the early morning, and then usually the nicer coffee in the afternoon, unless I'm making butter coffee, at which point I just do the Aldi coffee anyway because I'm going to throw butter in there. Who cares? Napoleon, have a book written, Mike? If yes, title please, and where to find it. If no, what would you love to write about as your first book and why? Oh, Napoleon, what a great question. No, I do not have a book written. Yes, I should have written multiple books by now. I have an easy 2 books in mind that I want to write. One is called, I already have a title for the one, called The God Coin. This is based on, there's a passage in the New Testament where the Pharisees try to trap Jesus when it comes to taxes. And, you know, if you're the king of the Jews, the Messiah, are you going to pay tax to Caesar? You're going to pay the taxes, etc. And long and short of it is, Jesus says, he says, bring me a coin. He says, whose image is on the coin? Well, it's Caesar's image. And he says, well, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and render unto God what is God's. And what's interesting about that is we often fixate on the money piece. Like, well, that means it's okay to pay taxes to the government. You know, we kind of go there. But the thing that's really interesting about that is the coin has an image on it. And so he says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, but render unto God what is God's. Well, what in this creation, what in this world that you and I live in has God's image on it? If the coin has Caesar's image, American money has American presidents on it. So if the coin has the king, the president, the emperor's image on it, what in this world bears God's image? Well, imagine that. Christianity teaches that human beings bear God's image, that we are the image bearers of God. And so Jesus was making a very powerful statement saying, yeah, give Caesar the money, who cares? But make sure that you give God what is his, which is you. You need to give yourself, render yourself unto God. So I'd love to write a book about that concept and unpack that. What does that really mean? That's one. The other is, I've got this more later in the last year or so, this idea for a book on strategy that I want to write, and that is probably the book that I will write sooner than later, called True Strategy. I won't get into the details of that, but those are 2 books that I would like to write. I also have a fiction story that I've noodled around for years in my mind. Don't know if I'll ever write fiction, but that's that. Ceramic Steve, Ninja Coffee Maker. The Ninja Coffee Maker, I have a client, Steve, that has a Ninja Coffee Maker in one of their break rooms. I've used it. Ninja brand is everywhere. Now, I use a Ninja when I make butter coffee because what I will do is make the coffee, throw that butter in a Ninja, and blend it. Get it nice and foamed up. But I have had coffee through a Ninja Coffee Maker. Ninja makes all kinds of stuff. You can make soup in some of these Ninjas. So that's that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Uncle Mike saying, I think it's time. Only because we're 6:15 here, East Coast, in the Deep South. And I probably should get going before the night is gone. I'm really grateful you guys joined me. I appreciate it. I hope you had a good time. Very encouraging. It was unannounced, just kind of throw the camera on, have 10, 11, 12 people at a time show up, great comments, great questions. Brad, always thank you. Anonymous, Steve, Napoleon, just so many great people jumping in. Tony Hawk even, Holla Holla. I mean, it was just great to hear from everybody. Or Holic Holic. I'm curious, Holic Holic, how you say your name. Holic, Holic, Holic Holic. I know it's not your official name, but I'm just curious how to pronounce that. But yeah, big thank you to everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I've really, you made my Sunday evening, so thank you. Hopefully you guys have a great week. And if you are in the U.S., and if you're not, we all have something to be thankful for. We're celebrating Thanksgiving here. But I wish you guys all the best. I'm thankful for you, each and every one of you. Love you all. And I hope to catch you all in the next live stream. Cheers.